All right, everybody. So we're going to get started. Thank you all for coming out tonight to the monthly meeting of the Whaley Edgewood Beaver Hills Community Management Team. We like to start each meeting with a reading of the mission, and it is as follows. The purpose of the Web Community Management Team is to improve the quality of life, reduce crime, and improve the safety of the District 10 community, hereby known as the Whaley Edgewood Beaver Hills Community Management Team. This will be done through the integration of neighborhood groups, institutions, and individuals working in partnership with the Department of Police Services and other city departments. So we like to start, we'll jump right into the agenda. And we usually start with our police report. You will all notice that our beloved district manager, Lieutenant John Healy, is not here tonight. He had surgery about a little over a week ago for a torn meniscus in his knee, but his surgery was successful, so we're happy about that. In his place, covering for him will be Lieutenant Rosa, who covers the District 2? Not District 2, that's downtown. He'll speak to that. So Lieutenant Rosa, you can start us off.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm Westville, West Hills, District 2, Westville, West Hills of New Haven.
Oh, District 2.
Yep. I'm filling in for Lieutenant Healy. I don't have much to say. Obviously, we have the mayor online. I'm sure a lot of people want to listen to him more than me. Our main thing for the past week that I've been looking over, all the police reports, were burglaries and car thefts. Obviously, we want to push out that information to not leave your car warming up as much as possible. And the car break-ins, every single car break-in that we had were doors unlocked on the cars. So again, we just need to educate most of everyone to try and keep our stuff locked, or we're going to lose it. That being said, I am formulating a flyer that I'm passing out to the businesses for to help them educate themselves on how to harden their business and keep it from being broken into and victimized. Also, if anyone has any questions, I'm going to put my email and my telephone number in the group chat if I can, if that's available here. And if you have any immediate questions, you can ask me now really quickly, or you can sidebar with me and I'll answer those questions and pass them along to Lieutenant Healy. That's all I have.
Thank you, Lieutenant Rosa. Any questions for the lieutenant? Probably not so much this meeting, but maybe next meeting we'll have a few more for you.
Yeah, roger that. So Lieutenant Healy will be back on the 29th of this month. So you'll have Lieutenant Healy in your next CMT.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for stepping in. We appreciate
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
So next up, we have our LCI update from our neighborhood specialist, Maggie Fernandez.
Good evening, everyone. I have a medium update for today. I've got a few things to say, just as far as the snow has melted away. So there's a lot more visible violations that are going on throughout the district. So a good number of cases have been opened or reopened for recurring issues, as well as I've reapproached some issues that are going on within the district where there are not vacant buildings, and handing them over to the appropriate departments. I could give you a name off of all the streets, but we'll be here a little while where I have things that are open. The shorter list would be where I didn't open something new or revisit. But things such as chipping paint, missing siding, overflowing dumpsters, trash throughout the exterior, dilapidated garages, and explanation of plans for vacant properties in unacceptable state. If not pending civil citations right now, they're being reopened this year with expectations of compliance with a shorter timeline. Now that the weather is breaking, graffiti being an example as well. Housing Code has been really doing great with referrals that I've been handing over to them on inspections with the district, where properties are not vacant and they're visible, like there are visible Housing Code issues on the exterior, as well as I've gotten quite a few complaints via phone call or email due to issues on the interior that need to be addressed. But we've got a good number of complaints and inspections going on. So I've been canvassing the district on streets such as Edgewood, Sherman, Winthrop, as always, Fitch, Whaley, Dickerman, Orchard, Norton, throughout the entire district to keep it shorter. DPW has been informed of a number of trash and public space issues as well, such as tree belt issues, where they're resolving by picking up unsightly, illegally dumped items on the tree belts and sidewalks. In the coming weeks, I will be working with a public space official to combat some of the issues that are recurring along some of our busiest streets, such as Sherman, Whaley, for unmaintained areas that are in the public space, so that we can go half and half on getting some attention on these issues. Onto a more pressing issue that has come up repeatedly over the past couple of years or more. I've prepared a new violation notice for the old Newts building that has been under order for demolition in 2019, I believe, by the building department. We've seen half of the building come down. We've yet to see what's going on with the remaining plans for demolition or what have you. I have not gotten back information from the building department or the owner, but I have reached out. So if I don't hear back from the owner, I believe.
We lost you, Maggie. You're muted.
Maggie, you got muted.
Oh, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
What was the last thing you guys heard?
I think you had said a curse and then you were cut off.
Don't listen to that. You're talking about Newt.
But again, I have a new violation order on the old Newts building on Whaley Avenue. We're waiting to hear back from building department or the owner. If we did not hear back in a timely fashion, which I believe the time is about to expire for the owner, I have paperwork set in place to move forward to civil citation and lien should we have to, until we do find out what's really going on with that demolition order that was put in place. So I'll keep you all informed on the next meeting and every meeting until we do see something going on and some action going on over there. Can everyone hear me still?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Also, I have a good dozen civil citations that are pending, but I'm hoping to resolve these before the middle of the spring. Now that there's really no reason not to get some of these issues resolved, such as the graffiti, siding, painting. I plan to have a list of resolved cases for the majority by the next meeting as well, so I can give you the properties where that's going on. On the other hand, work has begun on a few vacant buildings that we've been keeping an eye on, such as 785 Elm Street, 416 Winthrop, 440 Norton, and 365 Winthrop. I've been working with our 4 alders and residence owners to resolve several concerns from illegal auto repair, front yard parking, resident concerns on property for neighbors, nuisance, and noise complaints. Should you have any of the above mentioned issues going on, please contact me or post to C-Click-Fix. We'll make sure that everyone in the proper department gets these issues on their radar so that they can start to resolve. Let's see, I really can't express enough how important it is to report the issues that you may have and how important or how helpful actually C-Click-Fix has been to getting this information to the right departments. So I definitely encourage that. And if someone should happen to not be able to access C-Click-Fix, please give me a call. Also, I'm still trying to get volunteers to do a community cleanup. I'd like to get a few community cleanups going on throughout the warmer months from the spring over to the end of the summer. Ideally, I'd like to do one a month. My sign-up sheet is not looking too good. So if there's anyone on our call tonight that'd like to reach out to some members of the community, or I have a couple of churches in mind. I don't know if I'm going to get SCSU students this year at all due to COVID, but this is something where we can definitely keep 6 feet or more apart to get something accomplished within our community. So if anyone should happen to know folks that would be interested, I'd like to pick at least 4 to 6 sites throughout the community for this, the summer months or the spring and summer months. Again, this is just an update of some of the things that I've been working on, but if you'd like more specific information on any cases, I'm available all day, normally throughout the entire day until about 5, 6 o'clock. If you need any specific information where I'm close to my files or can get to them, my contact information is normally available. Nadine, if you can post that to anyone that may not have that, I'm ready, willing, and able to help.
Thanks, Maggie. Any questions for Maggie? I'm gonna put her.
Hi, Maggie. Just one more observation.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
There were trailer trucks parked again outside of Hill House this past weekend and the weekend before.
Okay, that's unfortunately that's just outside of my district, but if you can give me a call or send me an email, I want to connect you with the correct neighborhood specialist for right at Hill House. My cutoff line is right on Gough Street, but the neighborhood specialist can communicate that to the parking enforcement officer if you didn't do it directly.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Nadine, I have a bit of a follow-up, but I know that Shafiq also had his hand raised first.
Go ahead, Shafiq.
Yes, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Shafiq Abdul-Sabar. So Maggie, thank you for getting back to us regarding newts, because that certainly was a big concern of mine the last meeting. I'm still concerned about newt because when we talked about it, the fact that it had been on the slate to be condemned for, I was told, at least 2.5 years, nothing has been done. I read the ordinance on what appeared to be for blighted housing. It did not appear in the ordinance that there was any type of code enforcement. So right now, I'm still very concerned that if we can't get in touch with the owner and we're not really sure how long it's going to take to have this building come down, that this building continue to sit there. The other part of the issue that I have with it is because around the neighborhood of Beaverville particularly, there's several blighted houses. There's one on Carmel Street, near Gough. There's one mid-block on Winthrop, near Winthrop and Percival. There's actually one on Colony Road. So we've had these blighted houses and they're just sitting. And it's affecting people's property value, and particularly in the areas of like Sherman Parkway and Carmel Street areas, where we may have larger owners of African-American homeowners. There's reports that are out nationally that says their houses are already underrated because of some of the areas that they live in. So I'm concerned about that. And I'm hoping that maybe with the mayor, good evening, Mayor, with the mayor on the Zoom, we could actually get some action. Like, we need that building knocked. Why can't we knock the building down? Yeah, and then just like lien the owner, like the 50-50 sidewalk program, like knock it down and then just lien the owner.
Right. You know? I agree with you. We can talk about some of the other specific properties on a more detailed conversation if you'd like to talk to me tomorrow. 124 Carmel has been purchased, and I am allowing them time to do the rehabilitation to that property. Other properties, I'd love to, get on the radar if I'm not already if I don't already have blight notices against them. I am doing some spot checking with a lot of the new vacant properties that I was not aware of. But with newts, this is something that I did start off a couple of years back, and it was handed over to the building department because they were ordered to demolish. It was not ordered to be condemned, but demolished. So this is something that we have to take up with the building department. Because something has not happened as of yet, I decided to reopen the case that once the building department took over, my case was closed because it was ordered for demolished. So I'm reopening because it's been definitely too long. And I feel the same way as you do. I mean, as a neighborhood specialist, I don't want to hear of something, dangerous coming up, so often. So I'm trying to do my part to make sure that something else does happen. I've sent something over to the building department as well. And if the owner doesn't sign for our letters, we have them served by marshal. But there is a timeline that we have to respect and go through a procedure. So I will definitely keep you informed, but I'd love a little help from the mayor's office, Mayor Elicker. I appreciate anything that you can do. We really just need some answers as far as what the building department is really going to be doing.
Is 345 Whaley? What's
Yes.
Newt's address?
345, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for folks here, I think that it's not as important whether it's this department or that department, it's that the city gets it done, right?
Right.
So let's connect. I'll start an email chain with you and Jim.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Thank you, Maggie.
You're welcome.
So I think what Shafiq has said kind of like has set me up like a layup for what I wanted to mention tonight. And first, hi, I'm Kelly. I moved to Beaver Hills about a year ago, and Maggie, you really helped me out this week, and I just want to say thank you for answering my call and caring about this neighborhood. But like I just wanted to, because I know everybody here cares about the community. I've had, of course, I just mentioned an LCI issue on my block in Beaver Hills. And I don't know if there's a way to address what I'm seeing become a trend, but basically it's that Beaver Hills is a wonderful community that is one of our last affordable communities in New Haven for single families, for young people, for people of all demographics. But the trend I'm seeing as somebody new here is that management companies are coming in and making cash offers on houses that people just can't compete with. And as a result of that, we're seeing construction companies flip houses, and these construction companies just like don't care about the neighborhood. The house next door to me, as Maggie could attest, was filled with garbage for over a year. We've got another one across the street, same situation until recently. And it's super concerning for me as somebody who wants to be, a lifelong inhabitant of New Haven. I want to see longevity for myself, but also for my community. I know that Hamden and North Haven have tried to make efforts like thinking about Quinnipiac and renters, but I think that for Beaver Hills, it's about equity for people being able to afford housing. And I think that kind of connects with what Shafiq was saying. So, I mean, again, like I don't have a resolution, but like I'm a willing member of the community if anybody has any ideas or wants to try something.
So Kelly, thank you for that. This is a conversation that is probably occurring all across the city because this is happening all across the city. New Haven, for all the snipes that people want to say about it and make about it, is a very hot market right now. And lots of people want to build here and live here. So it's a conversation that needs to be had. I think it's a conversation that needs to be had with our alders, obviously with our mayor, the Affordable Housing Task Force, which is in place now, I believe. It's something that definitely should be brought up with them because that is their mission, is to look into affordable housing and address these issues. I can't tell you how many cards I personally have gotten at my house myself, as well as phone calls. I don't know how they got my number, but they just start calling nonstop to the point where I had to block them. It's just a place where lots of people want to be. They see the opportunity. They see the advantages of living in the city. They see what a great market this is, what a great place this is, and they want to be here. But this is something that needs to be addressed on a citywide level because it literally is happening all over the city. So just to try to tackle it in one neighborhood wouldn't be the right approach. This is definitely something that has to come from all sides. It definitely needs the voices and the leadership from our elected officials, as well as Hartford, because again, there's only so much we can do at the city level. At some point, we have to get the support and the help from our leadership up at the Capitol. And there may be a conversation where we try to invite some of our representatives from Hartford to come and speak to us about that because it is a concern, and see what they can do to help us. Hopefully we have stimulus money coming in. Hopefully that can be used for some things. But again, this has been an issue that's been building in New Haven for a very long time. It won't be solved quickly. Unfortunately, it won't be solved soon, but it needs to be addressed. We do have the task force, so hopefully that will come up on their radar very soon, and those meetings will be open to the public whenever they do meet. I'm not even sure when they do meet, but it's definitely something that's been on the minds of lots of folks, and I'm sure lots of folks here have either gotten the postcards in the mail or the calls themselves, but it's definitely an issue to be addressed citywide. Yes.
What are just as a quick follow-up, what are the postcards?
It's little postcards that say your address on it, and it says looking to sell, or I've been in the neighborhood. I saw your house. Would you be interested in selling? Give me a call. Just little mailers, looks like.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I know at least 10 neighbors who would definitely be interested in like fighting for this cause. You know, thinking about like, you know, staying a community and like really like building up. You know, I'm of course thinking about Beaver Hills because this is where I live. So I mean, we've got the mayor here, we've got alders, we've got people running to be alders. Like, hi, I'll put my email in chat and I can connect us with more people.
Right.
I had a couple of comments about it, if that's all right.
Let Shafiq say what he has to say first, Mayor, and then you can have the floor.
Sure.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Mayor, for letting me go. I just want to respond to what Kelly was saying too, because another key part of what I hear her saying is, hey, listen, I am a homeowner. People are coming in that don't really have equity or, vested equity intentions in the neighborhood. They're remodeling houses and they're filling it up with trash for a year, and that's okay. And so I guess what I'm saying is, as a resident, that is absolutely not okay. I realize that it could be happening in other places in the city. It might be a problem around the state of Connecticut, but guess what? I pay taxes on Winthrop and Glen Road. I'm concerned about what's happening on Winthrop and Glen Road. I'm concerned what's happening with my neighbors if they got trash across the street for rodents and other issues that come about, dropping their property values as they got to do painting and all these different things. So here's what I'm saying. We need the enforcement. We need somebody coming behind these contractors and these home remodelers when stuff is happening and we know the houses are vacant. We need to have people out there checking. They got to get building permits. I mean, like, since when do we start just doing anything without a building permit anymore? So, I'm going to put that kind of like back downtown, that if we can just figure out a way to coordinate that, that's number one. Number two, yes, as residents, we don't have to wait. We can do something. How about we get together and put our money together and start suing people? That'll get some attention, because I don't want my property going down. And I understand, like, with the mayor and everything, there's a proposal to potentially raise taxes. Like, what are we paying for? It's really frustrating. And I apologize if I do sound a little animated, but these are the things that must happen. The ordinances we have around this type of stuff is extraordinarily void of being able to do any type of enforcement. So all we're doing is sending emails. So I'll close that out and say, Kelly, thank you. And you can add 11 residents to your 10. And I am more than willing. We can all socially distance and talk about it. I will be reaching out to you. Thank you.
We're actually very close neighbors. We should chat very soon.
Okay. Thank you, Shafiq. Mayor Ellicott?
This is a citywide issue. And I think this is one of the biggest quality of life issues that everyone is facing. Mandy management is one of the ones that comes up most frequently around the city. I think there's some other larger property owners as well that are problematic, but there's I think a number of things that we are working on, and a number of things that can happen more immediately. I do really encourage people to report things. So for example, if someone is doing construction and doesn't have a building permit posted in their front of their house, you need to let us know and we will respond to that. And obviously, if there's any specific blight issues, let Maggie know. If you don't get action, email me. It's jelliker@newhavenct.gov, and I'll put it in the chat. I find as mayor, I often don't know what's going on the ground all the time. I can't be everywhere. And so it's helpful for people to not inundate me, but if you're not getting something done at the department level, let me know. And I can nudge it along. And it also gives me more of an idea of what's going on. A couple of things that we're doing. We're doing these neighborhood sweeps around the city, walking with department heads to take a look at different housing, primarily housing issues, but some other issues as well. We have a public space inspector, Lori Lopez, that used to be an LCI, and she's doing more inspections widely. I think one of the things that I'm most excited about that is not yet ready is we're working on through LCI on a tracking on the licenses, landlord licenses, and LCI inspections, and it will be a online portal where the public can type in the address of a house and look up when was the last time that house got inspected, did the landlord pass the inspection, did LCI come back and re-inspect if they didn't pass the inspection? Have they had other complaints of rats or blight or whatever? And it does a number of things. Number one is it holds us accountable. It holds the city accountable because you'll see if we didn't go back for an inspection, right? Maybe we inspected once and we found some problems and we didn't go back. So it'll make it easier for us to know when we're not doing our job and make sure that we do it better. But the other thing is if a landlord knows that they're trying to attract tenants and that you can look at their history, then they're more likely to be good landlords. And I think that the third thing about this is what a number of people have been saying is that I think we need to be tougher on landlords and not accept inaction. And just one example, and there's a couple others that we're working on. There's a house on Cantor Street that's been under construction for 2 decades, and it has scaffolding in front of it, and it's had scaffolding forever and been complained. There's lots of complaints, and we have sent the guy saying you are going to get fined $100 a day if you do not move on this, and we've been on top of it, on top of it, on top of it. And I think that that's not only just about that house, but that's an example of many other people that are doing these sorts of things. So I think that we need to be really tough. One other comment about it, I do think the homeowner opportunities are significant, and we're going to be having a community process about input on the stimulus funding that's coming in. And it just seems like there's some room for some potential home ownership incentives or something along those lines in that conversation. And we welcome that input from you all.
Alder Marks.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Yes, this is Alder Marks. Thank you, Mayor Elliker, for that there. And I came in on the tail end of Miss Maggie's report, but if I'm hearing what I'm hearing, I just want to say throughout the ward, and I guess Beaver Hills, when something comes up and it's brought to my attention, whether it's a blight home or the property is being misconduct with trash or whatever, I reaches out to Maggie and she's very responsive. And I mean, we go to the extreme, if she can't get it done herself, I'm sure she reaches over to the city as Chair Lady Nadine, you stated, it's just not just a neighborhood problem, but it's also a state, city, and it's happening everywhere. So if something is brought to my attention, I say to my constituents, let me know. And I'll do all my best to try to address that situation and get it resolved. So this is something we all can work with together. And hopefully one day that we can get rid of all blight homes next door to us, people that's living uncomfortable, and make this a better situation. But we are moving on this year. Maggie, I think you're doing a great job. You are so responsive when I'm calling, reaching out about certain things and some other things too, to you as well, Nadine. So I just thought I would say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Marks. I just want to pivot us back to one other agenda item before I give the floor over to the mayor, and that is our treasurer's report from Bob Kaplan.
Thank you. Our report is a very short one. We have no income to report, but we did have an expense of $55, which is a gift for Lieutenant Healy's get well wishes from the management team. That leaves us with a balance of $8,467. And that's the report.
Thank you, Bob. And he was very appreciative. He thanks us all very, very much. Okay. With that being said, Mayor, you already started. The floor is yours.
Other remarks made me think of something else before I dive into some just comments about the city. We're also working on a requirement that a landlord needs to be tied to a natural person. What that means is oftentimes there's LLCs and you can't figure out who actually owns the property. And therefore, it's very difficult for us to enforce what's going on at the property because you actually can't figure out who owns it and you can't find that person. And so we're looking into our legal authority, which we believe we have it, to require a property to be associated with a real, actual live person that we can find. And it sounds kind of technical, but it's actually a really big deal. It'll be very helpful for us doing enforcement. I always find that it's much more helpful to leave more time for people to talk about what they want. So I'm not going to say a ton of things to start. I do want to, it's been a little while since I've been at the web management team, and I want to talk just in general about how the city's done over the past year. I mean, I've been mayor for 14 months now, and it feels like an eternity in many ways, and it also feels like just yesterday that I started. Through COVID, I think that the city, and I'm not talking about City Hall, I think I'm talking about New Haven as a community has done an amazing job. And we have not done anything perfectly by any means, but we have supported each other, nonprofits, community leaders. We've stepped up and worked together to follow the science, unlike some folks at the national level, and even a lot of governors have done. We followed the science. We, in particular, invested in individuals and communities that historically have not gotten the support that they needed. And I'm very proud of being the mayor of a city where people came together to do so. And, that's everything from pop-up sites. We had the first testing site where someone could actually walk to it. The testing sites all around the state were drive-up, and popping up testing sites all around the community, particularly in underserved communities, making sure the kids in schools had devices and free internet, making sure we've rehoused over 350 individuals experiencing homelessness, which is a challenge during good times. It's not just we've had hotel rooms, we've actually found permanent housing for that number of people. There's more work to do there. And more recently, we're working on getting the vaccine out. We've done 18 pop-up vaccination sites in underserved communities, and we'll continue to do that. The health department's done over 10,000 vaccines, and we've gone through almost all the school personnel as well. So it's been, like I said, there's a ton more work to do, but I'm really proud of the way that we've responded to it. And meanwhile, we've gotten a lot of other things done. It's the small things that mean a big deal to people. Like we passed legislation in partnership with the Board of Alders to increase fines on dirt bike and ATV riding, and give some more authority to stop that from happening. We started a small construction jobs program pilot that we want to grow. We've opened a reentry welcome center, which has been talked about for years, because for folks that know about this, we have over 900 individuals that are returning citizens every year coming out of prison. And they get dropped off in front of the Whaley Avenue Correctional Facility. They get dropped off on the green. They get dropped off on the police station with basically nothing. And that's ridiculous. That shouldn't have happened. And we've talked about for years having a warm handoff, if you will. And now every person that comes out of prison will be dropped off on Grand Avenue in front of Project Moore. And on site, when they get dropped off, will be a caseworker, a peer support specialist, someone that's had experience, lived experience, that can help connect people with social services and support. It's not going to change the world, but my goodness, when you get out of prison and there's someone there that says, I've had the experience that you had, and here's how it worked for me, and here's services, I think it's going to make a huge, huge difference. So we've done a lot of things. And one of the things I think is the biggest that is not yet fully over the finish line is pilot funding that our state legislators, in particular Martin Looney, have worked very, very hard to address. And I think, when I talk about the budget and money, some people tend to glaze over. But I can tell you every single day, I don't have enough money to pay for things. And it's paying for a librarian in every school, a guidance counselor in every school, social workers that can help support more of the reentry population, LCI staff to enforce the rules. It's like everything we do, the city doesn't have enough money to do it. Speed humps, I mean, you name it, right? And this year, after 2 decades of saying the state has an increased pilot, you know, everyone has said that for 2 decades. This year, the state legislature voted to effectively increase more than double the pilot payment that will come to the city. They have not fully finalized it because they need to put money in the budget, but they're getting very close to this. We get $41 million annually from pilot. If this occurs, if they approve this in its current form, we will get $90 million from pilot. And while we unfortunately can't dance in the streets and say we have an extra $40 million to spend on services, because we have such serious budget problems and our pensions are gobbling up a lot of that additional funding, our debt service, we will have stability. We won't have to scrape around for every dime to get through and every year cut more and raise taxes more. Again, it's not yet there, but it's getting close. And I'm optimistic that with the work of Senator Looney and our state partners and the work of our team that we'll get this done. I wanted to add one more thing before opening it up to questions. We're in a crisis, right? We're in a health crisis that I'm hoping we're close to the end of. We're in an economic crisis unlike our nation has seen in a long, long time. And I think that most of us prioritize that when we're in a crisis, we should use that as an opportunity. And I think that now is a time for just incredible opportunity. It's an opportunity to talk more deeply about the injustices that exist. And I think that we're all having more meaningful conversations than many of us have had in the past about that. But the fact that we are having $95 million in stimulus funding coming from the federal government, plus around $94 million going to New Haven Public Schools from the federal stimulus package. The fact that we may get this pilot funding that will bring economic stability to our city. We don't just need to dig out of COVID, but this is an opportunity for us to rethink asset building in our community, wealth building in our community, how we define ourselves, what we're going to look like in the future. It's a huge, huge opportunity, and it's exciting. It's really exciting. We've experienced a ton of pain over the past year, but I'm really optimistic in the direction that we're headed because of the work that we've done together, and also because of some things that are somewhat outside of our control that have presented us with a real path forward that's exciting for our city. So why don't I open it up to some easy questions from folks.
Easy questions. Questions for the mayor.
And that was directed at you, Miss Nadine. You always ask difficult questions, so you're not allowed to ask any questions, I don't think.
Okay. I'll let others go first. Any questions for the mayor? Don't be shy, folks. You have the man himself here.
Come on, there's got to be something good. Why don't you ask me? So once one person starts asking a question, then everyone will.
Sure.
There are hands up.
Sawa, you can go first. Sawa, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yep, we hear you now. Nope, now we can't.
Can y'all hear me?
Now we can. Yep.
All right, awesome. Hello, y'all. I wanted to just ask a little bit about, because I wasn't actually aware that the stimulus money that was coming into from the package was coming into New Haven, which sounds really exciting. It's particularly, being on the cultural equity committee for the city, and talking a lot about funding and arts funding and community funding. What is that process just in terms of looking like? If you could speak a little bit more to like how involved the community is in that process of with the stimulus check coming, and just in relation to also the budget that we've heard, you know, has been having trouble balancing that with the deficit, and like what that means.
So I have some answers and some not quite yet ready answers. So technically the Board of Alders approves every grant that the city has. And so there's a process that we will be working with the Board of Alders on receiving the funds. On the city side, because there's New Haven Public Schools funding that will come in from the federal government, and there is funding that will come to the city. Of the $95 million that's going to come to the city, we get that. Our understanding, and this was just approved last week, so we're still kind of looking at the details, and the details are being developed. But we will get one payment, the first payment, in 60 days. It doesn't mean we need to spend it all in 60 days, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that are really hurting right now and living on a threat, living on a threat. I think that I can't remember the right phrase, but so we're anxious to work with the Board of Alders in the community to direct some of that funding pretty quickly to the community. I think that what you're likely to see is a mixture of some in-person and some Zoom community meetings to gather input. But again, we need to work that out, and we're having conversations with the leadership on the Board of Alders about how that looks like, so that we need to make sure that we're doing go through the process of accepting a grant through the Board of Alders, but at the same time, want to make sure we get community input. As far as what the funding can be used for, so I would categorize it in 3 different buckets. One is addressing the costs of COVID for the city. And those costs are 2 different areas. One is it covers lost revenue. And we've lost a significant amount of revenue. For example, no one's parking, or no, not no one, but a lot of people aren't parking downtown. So city gets a lot of parking meter revenue and parking ticket revenue. As much as folks hate parking tickets, that's a revenue source for the city. And so it'll make up for some of that lost money, which is very, very helpful given we have this big deficit. And then there's also expenses associated with that. And that's everything from health-related expenses to police overtime, right? Every city around the nation has experienced a significant increase in violence. And New Haven is no different. And we've spent a lot of money on police overtime over this past year, responding to a lot of that violence. And so that's the first bucket of funding that will cover some of those expenses. The second is kind of getting us out of COVID. And that's things that will help address some issues of people that have been impacted significantly by COVID and have experienced some loss from COVID. So it may be some eviction prevention funding and those sorts of things. The third bucket is, I find the most exciting, and it's around economic development. And this is where I think we can think a little bit bigger about how can we use this funding, not just as a one-time thing where we spend it and it's gone, but how can we use this funding to last for years and years to come? And that gets into maybe it's a home ownership, investment in some home ownership. Maybe it's investment in minority-owned business development. Maybe it's investment in job training, things that we invest once, and it's more likely that that investment will give back to the community for a long period of time. Another category there is on fiber, because there's the private market is not serving communities where there's not as much of an ability to pay for fiber, but it's a huge asset to have high-speed internet across all of the city for people. So that's another area that we can invest now, and it actually would help business growth. It would help people access jobs, et cetera. So that's the third area, and I find that the most exciting.
Chris, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the questions I think I had was covered with your last answer, which was economic development. And I was wondering, and you pretty much answered it about investment back into economic development, but also in terms of the pilot program and how that works, and I've seen in the news and the media get into the whole details about tax exempt properties that are being brought up, and especially Yale. Have the negotiations or the talks with Yale ceased now that you're getting more money from the state and federal money, or is that still something that is being pursued in the city level?
It's ongoing. And I am cautiously optimistic. I actually think it helps that we have additional funding coming in, likely additional funding coming in from the state, because in some ways it feels like looking at the future pension issues and our underfunded pensions and a $66 million gap in our budget for this year, it feels like that's so huge that it's kind of like this hole that you throw money into and it just falls through it because you can't plug the hole because it's so big. And I think that there's an element of the greater hope that what investments the university and the state might do if they work together, and what the city could be, is inspiring for everyone involved. I mean, ultimately the people that are involved are humans, and there's more, I think, enthusiasm about what we could accomplish if we do things together. So I don't think it alleviates pressure on the university to be a part of the solution here, and the conversations are ongoing.
Joanne,
say hi to Alex, Chris.
Joanne, you had your hand up.
I think Shafiq had his up before me.
So I'm gonna save Shafiq because Shafiq's gonna be a little long-winded. So I'm gonna let you.
He has his hand up all the time, doesn't he?
Go ahead.
Okay, and I don't know if this is a quick answer or not, but I heard you talk about the Welcome Center and the small construction pilot program. And you know where my heart is, 14 to 24-year-olds in alternative education and kids that have lost sight of their education path. I just wonder what you've learned over the last 14 months in that role, in your role as it relates to our young kids that have lost sight of their path.
I think the pandemic has been brutal in this area. It's just been brutal. And it's, how can you effectively engage kids if they're not, and young people if there's not any in-person engagement, right? It's just the loss of educational opportunities, but more importantly, the loss of just support in the community. And there's ways, and I don't want to discount the teachers and paraprofessionals, but teachers have been incredibly creative on how they're continuing to engage with young people. But it's just way more difficult if you don't have a place where people can go and interact in person, like that center. And we've seen some results of that. There has been, and this is not representative of the community of that age group as a whole, but for young people that are at risk, there's been increased involvement and pretty brazen involvement in violence. USTAT has been working very hard to try to engage with kids in a proactive way. But I think that it's been a real challenge. And in thinking back, I think that we're at the anniversary of when the pandemic really hit us hard, right? We have all these anniversaries recently: the anniversary when we shut down schools, the anniversary when we had our first case, the anniversary when I signed the emergency order. So it's a time to kind of reflect. And honestly, I think a number of people ask me, what would you do differently? And I'm not exactly sure. It seems to me that we should have done something differently here, but I'm not exactly sure what that is, because we didn't know, for example, that we could have some in-person engagement if we had masks and such. We didn't know that until more recently. This is an opportunity for stimulus, I think, and I don't want to jump ahead to say that I have the right ideas. I do think that, I mean, you think about the only school that is specifically targeted to support young people that are really struggling, you know it well, Joanne, is in really bad shape physically. And it's an opportunity, I think, for us to think about, should we have more VOTEC or practical training for young people that may not end up going to college too. And that may not be the traditional VOTEC either. There's a lot of other things that I think in the modern day world that we can invest in. So I think there's opportunities there. And I'm very humble at the fact that I have a lot to learn from people like you that have been doing this work for a long time. I welcome any input or thoughts.
Shafiq.
Yes, good evening, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for joining on to this tonight. Yeah, so I just have two things. I'm not gonna speak long. I know that there's a proposal on the table to raise the taxes, and I know last year the police budget got cut. What my suggestion or request would be, just like when we do environmental studies before we build something in the community to see what the environmental impact is there a way that we could do or have some type of study done to see what the impact would be on people by increasing the taxes again? Because a lot of the folks that I've been hearing from, like elderly, that people that are retired, a raising in taxes is going to break them right at their ability to survive in the city. You know, that's the one thing. And the other thing too is that if money is going to be taken out the police budget this year and redistributed back into the city, could at least be a conversation of splitting that money over the 10 police districts so that each district would get a portion of that money, and then the community, such as the management team and other organizations in that community with the residents, to come together and determine how they would like to have that money spent, maybe on more preventative items. And that's all. Thank you.
I appreciate the question. So just so people know, I'm required to submit a proposed budget to the Board of Alders on March 1st. And then they review the budget. There's public testimony opportunities now for the next 2 months. And then they will potentially amend the budget and then approve it. I've submitted 2 budgets to the Board of Alders. And that's been done once before with DeStefano. He submitted 3 budgets like 10 years ago. The problem with the timeline of our process is the state doesn't finalize their budget until June. So we have to guess what the state is going to give us and finalize our budget before we actually know what the state's going to give us, which is ridiculous because the state is one of the major funders for the city. And because of this pilot proposal that's out there that is it's a huge impact on the budget, I submitted a budget that assumes that we don't get that money and we don't get additional funding from Yale. And I submitted another budget that assumes we do. The budget that assumes we do is effectively status quo. The budget that assumes we don't, that I call the crisis budget, Shafiq is right, it raises taxes significantly, 7.75%. But it also does major cuts to the city. $2.5 million in layoffs. It cuts a senior center, a library, a firehouse, and other programmatic cuts. Neither one of these budgets is one that any of us want, or I'm sorry, the crisis budget is not one that any of us want to pass. And I think that oftentimes people will say, how can you raise taxes? Why don't you do something else? Why don't you cut? Well, cutting $2.5 million worth of employees is a lot of people. Cutting a library, I mean, the library is Mitchell Library, which folks here use. Westville is really upset about it. Do you think I wanted to propose that? The East Shore is really upset about the senior center, the firehouse on Whitney Avenue. I don't want to raise taxes. I don't want to cut things. I don't want to cut personnel. We do not have enough resources as a city, and we all know that, and it's been too long. But I think we have to be real that if we do not get that money from the state, this is what's going to happen. People say, well, why didn't you cut something else? I did. Instead of raising tax, why don't you cut something? We're cutting down to the bone. None of these decisions are good decisions. So yeah, I don't want to raise taxes. And I'm doing everything I possibly can to push the state and the university to ensure that we get that funding. I'm optimistic, but we're not across the finish line yet. I feel like your question had multiple parts, Shafiq. Oh, about policing. So the police got whacked last time in my budget. So last year we had $45 million gap between revenues and expenses when we put together our last year's budget, just to do things the way that we always do them. And that's because our pension costs rise, our debt costs rise, salaries increase. And there were over 100 positions cut in the budget last time around. Those were all vacant positions. It's easier to cut vacant positions than people. It's more costly to cut people as well because you have to pay unemployment for a long time. There were cuts across every department. The police department is the largest department in the city. I'm the first to acknowledge that it wasn't specific to the police department. The police department has a budget of $43 million. Libraries is $4 million. Youth department's $4 million. The police department's huge, next to the Board of Ed. And so that's where the largest cuts were from. I did not want to cut the police department. I think that there's a conversation. There's a lot more we need to be doing around rethinking policing, but the cuts were driven by the need to cut. And I raised taxes too, right? I didn't want to do any of those things. I'm dealing with a financial situation and trying to deal with it once and for all. So in the long term, we don't have these problems.
Rebecca?
Yeah, so I'm interested. I feel like some cities, especially some larger cities like New York, the sort of the transportation and use of public spaces like changed drastically in the pandemic, and it was really transformational, I think, in a positive way for those cities. And I feel like we've seen some of that here with using outdoor space downtown for dining, but I don't think it's anywhere near as extreme as it is in some other parts of the US. But I think there's an opportunity there. And so, I'm excited to hear about some of the transportation things that are in the works, thinking about Whaley, other places that can be transformed over time. But I'm wondering if you have thoughts on like, how can we capitalize on sort of the national change that hasn't necessarily happened here and like get more people using alternative forms of transportation, biking, walking, and then also make sure that we are continuing to use outdoor space in better ways after the pandemic is over. And maybe not just downtown, but in other parts of the city as well.
So I'm glad you actually brought this up because Mike Piscatelli, Economic Development Administrator, asked me to ask you all about ideas on Whaley Avenue for outdoor dining. As we move towards spring, there's lots of opportunities for us to facilitate that happening. And I am constantly, and if you ask Mike Piscatelli, what does the mayor bug you about the most? I think that he would raise this, constantly pushing Mike to get the bureaucracy aside to allow more businesses to do outdoor dining. Because I think it's really cool. I mean, aside from the fact that it's safer because of COVID, it's fun. It's a way to interact with people and in an engaged way that I don't think we have in indoor dining. We are 100% open to working with, and this is only one part of your question, so I'll talk about the other part in a second, but to working with restaurants to facilitate outdoor dining, not just restaurants or stores and things like that, 100% open. We haven't gotten as much interest as I had hoped. And where we have had interest, we've tried very hard to facilitate that. There's a lot of interest in East Rock in closing down the road in the park. And it's been one of the things I get the most positive feedback. If folks have gone over there, that there's tons of people walking on that road all the time. There's on Orange Street and Temple Street, we've closed down parts of both of those streets to outdoor dining. It's been very popular. We're looking at Central Avenue. There's like a small block in Central Avenue in downtown Westville, and we're on track to close that and open that up to vendors, and very open to other opportunities there. Similar to the East Rock Road, we're very open also to closing down other roads if people want to use those for bike corridors and walking corridors. we of course, because the Board of Alders is the ultimate kind of decision maker on the roads, we would work with the Board of Alders, but we haven't had a lot of public interest in that has been voiced either. When we have, we've responded, and we will continue to do that. So if you all see potential there, we want to work with you to do that. I think, you know, similar to the other things I said about this being a crisis, let's use it as an opportunity. Let's try some things out. And if they don't work, you know, no big deal. We can go back to the way things were. But I think some of these things are going to stick. That, you know, some of the closed streets for outdoor dining, people might say, hey, this is really awesome. Let's keep it going. And then beyond the pandemic, it'll stay around. If there are other transportation ideas, I'd love to hear them from you, of things that you're seeing in other cities, because, you know, sometimes I think we're a little bit stuck in our ways, and I'm excited to think outside the box. So shoot me an email.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, I'm gonna cut the questions here. Mayor Elicker, thank you so much for coming to our meeting tonight. I'm gonna respectfully ask if you could come back sooner rather than later, not let so much time pass before you come back to see us. And another thing I would ask is if you could consider doing a sweep along Whaley Avenue. I think that'd be very, very helpful. And also I would ask, I'm not sure if you've done this already or someone from your office, in terms of coming up with plans for Whaley Avenue in terms of outdoor dining, etc. Thank you for coming to the community, but I also think you need to reach out to the Whaley Avenue Special Service District. We work with them to figure out ways to make Whaley Avenue more viable, safe. And I think they would really appreciate hearing from you, hearing that you're on board to do some of the things that they would like to do, that we would like to see them do as a community. So I think having someone from your office reach out to them to set up a meeting would be extremely helpful. And again, just not to take so long to come back to see us.
Appreciate that. Mike said that they are working with the Whaley Avenue Special Services District in the hope of doing something. So I believe that conversation is already going on. If you hear otherwise, just let me know, and I'll nudge him. I'll ask about the sweep. I'm going to look in 345 Whaley Avenue as well, Newts. And you're right. It's been a crazy year, but I always like coming to CMTs, and we'll do my best to come back sooner.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you all. I'm going to go say goodnight to my daughters. Thanks.
Yes, go say goodnight. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Okay, I'm going to move us along to our YNH update from Andy Orfice, who's going to talk to us about vaccine updates.
Yes, yeah, good evening, everyone. Andy Orfice from Yale New Haven. I have with me my wonderful medical colleagues who will actually provide an update on what's going on in the world of vaccines. And I'll put some information in the chat about where you can get testing as well as make appointments for the vaccines. I'll cede my time to Dr. Tracy Raven and her colleagues. Thanks.
Great, thanks so much, Andy, and thanks so much to the chair. I'm here today with 4 of my colleagues. We've been going around to the different community management team meetings over the past several months to just be resources for the community and answer questions about the vaccine. So Nadine, I know that you had a decent sized agenda for today. We had been asked last week to present some information about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and then additionally information about where folks can get the vaccine. And so we have a couple slides to share. Do you think that we have time for that, or should we just take questions from the group?
No, you can share those. This is important.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to introduce my colleagues. I have 4 other doctors with me. I have Anita Vasudevan, I have Margaret Hsu, I have Trey Bowen, and I have Ahmed Logroño, who are all on the line. So I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully everybody can see that. So I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Margaret, you're going to do the first couple of slides.
Sure, yep. So hi everyone, I'm Margaret. I'm an intern in the primary care program at Yale. So this first slide here is kind of summarizing the 3 vaccines that we currently have available. So there's the Pfizer one, the Moderna one, and then the newest one is the Johnson & Johnson. So as you can see there, like the Pfizer, Moderna, so there's some age differences. Pfizer's available for ages 16 and up, whereas Moderna and Johnson are for both 18 and up. And then Pfizer and Moderna both require 2 shots, whereas Johnson & Johnson just 1. And then there's just a slight difference between the timing for Pfizer and Moderna. So 3 weeks for Pfizer versus 4 weeks Moderna. Okay. And then this slide summarizes the trials that were done to study these 3 vaccines. So you'll see some differences. For example, the main difference for Johnson & Johnson here you can see is based on like the race and ethnicity of the participants. You can see there's like a larger cohort of, for example, Hispanic or Latino participants, as well as Black or African American compared to the 2 others. The ages in terms of older participants, 65 and older, are fairly similar across all 3. And then the efficacy here at the bottom, so like Pfizer is almost 95%, so 94.8% effective versus 94.1 for Moderna, so about the same. And then a little lower for Johnson & Johnson, so 66.9.
Great. And I would just add that this is, when we talk about these numbers, this efficacy, this just has to do with preventing people from getting COVID infection. So we'll talk a little bit more about more serious consequences on the next slide. And I'm going to ask my colleague, Anita, to take the next 2 slides.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Anita Vasudevan. And this slide, like Dr. Raven mentioned, does a really nice job of exploring the more severe consequences of COVID-19. So even though we noticed some differences between Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson in overall just preventing people from getting COVID-19, you can see that all of the available vaccines, including AstraZeneca, which is not yet approved in the US, as well as Novavax, are all have 100% efficacy at preventing death and hospitalization from COVID-19, which is really the most serious thing that we would worry about for anybody that got the infection. And then the light blue bar shows the efficacy at preventing severe COVID-19. And so, and the severe COVID-19 is really, it's a definition based on, so patients who would meet certain different criteria. So that would include things like having a really fast respiratory breathing rate, or having a decreased oxygen saturation in the blood. And so, the Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Novavax all have 100% efficacy at preventing that. And then the Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson are slightly lower, but still well above 80%.
Great. Thanks, Anita. And what I would say too is, you know, the bars, they do approach 100%. Nothing is 100%, but they're so close to 100%. That's the reason why it looks this way. So the key is that even though there may be some differences in terms of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in preventing sort of any COVID infection, when you compare the vaccines side by side in terms of preventing severe infection, hospitalization, and death from COVID, they all have very similar efficacy. So I think this is an important piece to keep in mind.
Yeah, and Stacey, that's a really good question about being more effective than the flu vaccine. The flu vaccine does vary year to year. So so every year we have a different efficacy of the flu vaccine. I don't know the one for this year off the top of my head. I think it's so I won't quote it, but all of these are more efficacious as of right now than many of the flu vaccines that are administered yearly.
Great.
All right, and this slide discusses some of the side effects related to vaccines, which is something that's been really covered in the media a lot as well. So this slide this was actually put together by one of the graduates from our residency program, and it compares the side effects of the 3 approved COVID-19 vaccines against the flu vaccine as well as the Shingrix vaccine. So the biggest side effect that people are experiencing is local pain. As you can see, the Shingrix vaccine actually is about tied with the Moderna vaccine. So local pain at the site of injection, about close to 90% of people are having that with Shingrix and 90% with Moderna, slightly less with Pfizer, and even less with the Johnson & Johnson. And you can take a look at the similar percentages of the kind of side effects that people experience, most commonly headache and fever. And all of those are pretty comparable to these other common vaccines that we have. The other box that we've highlighted here is percentage of people experiencing what's classified as a grade 3 side effect. And so that's one of the criteria that the FDA looks at in terms of grading side effects. So grade 3 counts as a very severe side effect that would cause like a marked reduction in a person's ability to participate in their daily activity and might even require medical attention. And the rate of those kind of side effects is very low for all 3 of the approved vaccines, even lower than, so Shingrix actually has the highest percentage at 5.2 there. And Johnson & Johnson is only 0.54%. And for Pfizer, it's 1.5 and 4.1 for Moderna. And then the overall side effects are pretty, on par with the Shingrix vaccine for the Moderna vaccine, and Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson are even less in terms of people experiencing side effects.
Great, thanks so much, Anita. So Trey, I'm gonna ask for you to do the next couple of slides.
Yeah, of course. So next question is who can get the vaccine? I know that this is a very fluid process and it always seems to be changing right after we look. But here's most up-to-date version of who's eligible. So first, who's been eligible and has been for quite some time is healthcare personnel, first responders, residents of long-term care facilities, or in congregate living settings. So usually that's already accounted for. They've been reached out to by their corresponding health departments or employers. Educators and childcare providers are now eligible regardless of age. That should be set up through the employer or through a local health director, not something they have to go out seeking on their own. And where it might apply to a lot of the people in this meeting is just general residents that don't fit in those above categories, but are 55 and older. And that will require actually seeking out the vaccine yourself. But soon to come, when later on in March, maybe in the next 3 days, excuse me, age 45 and older will be eligible. And then hopefully early May or early April, excuse me, those 16 and older will be eligible.
Great, and I would say too that this is the most recent information based on the governor's update from last night, where Connecticut is expected to be receiving increased amounts of the vaccine, and so they actually moved the time frame for the younger age groups forward from May to April. So hopefully that will move forward as planned.
And one thing that's been a vital resource for me, and I'll highly recommend it, is the portal at connecticut.gov, the vaccine portal. You'll see in the link listed there, not only will it allow you to help schedule your vaccine, but can also show you about who's eligible and the timeline of when people are going to be eligible. So a really clear and helpful resource. And I believe we're going to try to get these slides distributed to all of you. But here's the important phone number and then the website link as well that you can call to get the vaccine scheduled. Just an FYI, when you are registering for the vaccine, you will be required to provide some demographic information, so your name, date of birth, occupation if you're getting it because you're a teacher, for example, and then zip code and email address. This is strictly for the purposes of scheduling you and registering you for the vaccination. They won't be shared with other agencies, and the information will be kept private.
Great, thank you. And then this is just our last slide. And this is why, you know, if folks want to take a picture of this, you're welcome to, but we will send these slides to you, Nadine, so that you can distribute them. This is just the most recent list of all the different sites in the New Haven area that are offering the vaccine. I think, you know, it's nice to see that in addition to the city, Fairhaven has 2 vaccination sites. Cornell Scott has 2 vaccination sites. Yale New Haven Health has 3. And then now, as far as private pharmacies, Walgreens, CVS, and Walmart are all doing the vaccine. One thing just to make folks aware is that when you arrive, you will likely be asked to present a health insurance card. Now, people do not have to have health insurance in order to receive the vaccine. There are federal programs that are covering the cost. But if you do have health insurance, there is this process by which the different groups that are doing the vaccination campaigns would charge your insurance for the administration fee, the cost of somebody giving you the shot. And then the insurance companies in turn will be reimbursed by the federal government. So there will be no copay to go with this. There will be no cost passed on to the individuals, but not to be surprised if you show up at a vaccine center and somebody asks you for your insurance card. But again, nobody is going to be turned away if they do not have an insurance card to present. So I know that was a lot of information. So we'll stop there and just open it up for questions, answers. And I know you've got other things to get through tonight. So let us know. I'm happy to take whatever questions you have.
Alder Marks.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I have a question. I took my first shot last week, but I was hoping that I can get the J&J, and people are asking, how do I get the J&J? Is there any way of knowing wherever we're going, if we can choose what shot we rather have?
So that's a great question.
I'm sorry. No, if you've got a good answer, I won't. I don't want to overstep, but I've been mired in that one, so I've got it. If you want me to take it.
Well, why don't you go ahead, Andy, and then I might have something else to add.
All right, cool. Thank you. Alder Marks, great question. We've actually been getting a lot of requests specifically for J&J because people want the one shot and done scenario. Basically, Johnson & Johnson produced X amount of vaccine material. It got distributed to the states. And so for the most part, the J&J that came into Connecticut is gone. And we're now waiting for Johnson & Johnson to ramp up production to get it back out to the states. When you do go make an appointment, and I can only speak on behalf of Yale New Haven, but if you were making an appointment via our website or through our 833 number, which is a toll-free number, whatever date you're making that appointment for, they'll be able to tell you what vaccine is available that day. And that shows online, or if you're speaking to someone on the phone. Just right now, you're only going to be able to find the Moderna or Pfizer.
Thanks, Andy. And I think the only other thing I would add is that when I was looking earlier this afternoon on the Connecticut, the VAMS website, the website that I had put up that tells you where you can go to get the shot, next to the different locations, it indicated whether they were giving Moderna or Pfizer. So that, you know, I don't know that that necessarily helps you know which one you will get, but it gives you a sense of what the different sites will offer.
Under 18, does that require parental consent?
Oh, that's a good question.
We just had this discussion this morning at a meeting. It was still a little gray, but based on our experience with flu vaccines and with COVID testing, a minor would need to be accompanied by a parent or guardian. I think the only exception is if they were getting it at like their school-based health clinic, because there's already a parental or guardian something on file, but that's still fuzzy.
And it's not clear, I believe at this point, whether the school-based clinics would be offering the vaccines, at least in these first few months of the rollout.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about the vaccine? Marion, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I've had my 2 Pfizer shots at the field house, so I'm fine. So I volunteered to help some other seniors who are not computer savvy like I am to sign up by other routes. And and so I was checking around the different places, and both I called both the COVID number for Walgreens and Walmart, and both of them said that of course they have to have an appointment, but you also have to have an account with the store, and so that sounds restrictive, and you also have to do it by computer, so that these people would have to have a family member sitting with them to help them do it, to sign up for the vaccine, the vaccine appointment. But is that correct? That's what both of them, that their COVID pharmacy departments told me, that you have to have an account with the store. I don't know if that just means like Walgreens. If it was me, I mean, I have a Walgreens card because I live across the street. So I don't know if the account just means you have the card to get the sales, or whether there's some other kind of account, and they couldn't really explain that to me very well. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't sound right, that the people have to have an account with the store in order to use their pharmacy for the shot.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great question, Marian. I'll just make one comment and then I'll ask my colleague, Dr. Logroño, to add any thoughts as well. But what I, as far as making an account, for Walgreens and CVS anyway, what that means is somebody has to be registered with their website. So CVS.com, you can make a username and a password to be able to log into CVS or Walgreens online.
Actually, those kind of things, you have to put all kinds of personal information in there. I mean, I was, at one point, because I used CVS for my prescriptions, so I was going to sign up for their card, and there was this long sheet of all different kinds of personal information that they required. It's not just putting in your email and your name.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's the same for COVID or not. Dr. Logroño, do you have any thoughts? Because I know you were helping some folks with that. Okay, apologies. Okay, it may be that he's having some technical difficulties. So I personally haven't registered to make an account, so I don't know exactly what you need to put in, but I know that's what they mean when they say you need to have an account. And you're right, for folks who are not computer savvy or don't have access to a computer, this is definitely a gap in the system. People need help.
Yeah, for Yale New Haven, there is a phone number you can call. So like, for example, at the field house or at the West Campus and all those places. But for the pharmacies, you did have to go online to do it.
So shameless plug at Yale New Haven for our sites. We're purposely holding set aside appointments for New Haven residents at Floyd Little, and you can only access those by calling the number which I posted in the chat. It's to make it easier for people who have trouble with technology, it's the internet. So we're trying to drive people through the phone that way. And please, we urge people, the 55 and over crowd, if you're going to get the shot, get in now before Friday, because Friday it's going to be hectic when it opens up to the younger folks.
Yeah, well, we thank you for having one of the sites in our neighborhood anyway. Thank you.
And I just, yes, since we on this here about the COVID, for those that took the shot last month at Bethel, and me tomorrow, Wednesday, anyone they took their shot, they should go back at Bethel Church right there on Gulf Street to get their second shot. That'll be the pop-up for tomorrow in this ward. Those that took the shot there.
Thank you, Alderman. Sylvia?
Yes, I just wanted to say that for Walgreens and CVS, the information they required was your basic demographic information and medical history. That was, and also your medical ID information. That was all that they required.
Thank you so much for that. That's helpful. And certainly that's different than what the state sort of VAM's website is required, because they're not asking for medical history or anything along those lines. So thank you for providing that information.
You're welcome.
So like Tracy said, she's gonna send, it'll be The slide presentation will be in the meeting minutes, which is this recording. And then they're also going to send a copy of the presentation. So that will be in the meeting minutes as well. So we'll get that out to folks. But again, probably the best bet is to go through, like Andy said, if you know anyone 55 and over, please have them try to get their vaccinations by Friday, because once it opens up, I'm sure they're going to get slammed with people trying to get their shot. So please just get the word out to folks to just, if you need to help them, if they need help. We have volunteers, here on the call who want to help. So please, really encourage them strongly to get their vaccinations by Friday, because once this opens up, the options will drastically reduce. So please, we want to make sure our seniors are taken care of, and then before it opens up to everybody. So please get that message out. Okay, so with that being said, we are approaching 8:30, and we had a long meeting tonight. So in the interest of time, I'm going to just do a couple quick hits. I see Virginia Spell on the line, and I know that she's working with the Urban League of Southern Connecticut to talk about rental assistance. She is going to be speaking next month. So if you know folks who are in need of rental assistance, Virginia, is that also helping mortgage holders as well?
Oh, well, the funds that will be allocated to renters goes directly to the mortgage holders.
Oh,
so
excellent.
Renters will be eligible for up to $1,500 in utility assistance as well. So.
Okay. So she's going to have a whole presentation next month, because I knew this meeting was going to run long, and I do not want to shortchange that, because that's very, very, very important. So she will be speaking on that next month. The budget, the public hearings, I believe, are going on for the budget. So all the issues that we raised here with the mayor directly, that's great, but we need to get this information out to our alders. We have alder marks here. Our alder, Yvette Hamilton, for Ward 24 is the chair of the finance committee. So she needs to hear about this. So please go to those public hearings as they come up. You can find the information on the city's website, newhavenct.gov. And with that being said, thank you everybody for coming out tonight. Please be safe, be well, and I will see you all next month.
Thanks, Nadine.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Nadine.
Bye.
Thank you, Nadine.
You're welcome.